All right, welcome everybody. This is the Animation Educators Forum Summer Birds of a Feather discussion. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Animation Educators Forum. It's a group that was set up in 2007 for animation educators. We figured out that we knew that animators love to talk shop, and we knew that teachers love to talk shop. So we figured that animation teachers would also love to talk shop. So on the forum, we share ideas, we share, how to use the latest software, what kind of issues are you having in your classrooms, technological changes, social changes, so on and so forth. So we're there to give each other help and support in all of those areas. If you're not already a member, you can just let us know in the chat that you'd be interested in joining the forum. We have several events throughout the year. Birds of a Feather discussions like this one. We have a general membership meeting once a year. Lately, it's mostly been on Zoom, and hopefully soon we'll be back in person at some events. And if anyone else that's been on the steering committee for a long time wants to add anything else to that about the basics of our organization, feel free to jump in. But that's who we are. And Kevin is going to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Lee. Welcome, everybody. Our first guest is Nye Warburton, and he is the Associate Chair of Interactive Design and Game Development at Savannah College of Art and Design. He teaches animation and technology and has over 20 years of industry experience at major studios working on commercials, games, and movies like Monster House, Thor, and Oblivion. A few years ago, Nye discovered artificial intelligence on a motion capture stage and has since become obsessed with researching how it will transform consumer graphics. He aims to explain complex concepts simply to prepare the next generation of CG artists for an AI-empowered future. And our other guest is Chris Cassidy, an animator, effects specialist, and independent filmmaker. He's known for his energetic, abstract graphics, colorful flash title sequences, and visual special effects that span multiple industries, from motion picture effects to music videos and TV commercials. His film credits include Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, Airplane, Tron, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, Short Circuit, Ed Wood, and The Craft. For Tron, he created 55 effect shots and became the go-to animator for creating realistic sparks that fell with gravity. He has directed and animated on a number of projects, including music videos for Eddie Murphy and Beastie Boys, and his own animated film Pencil Dance won top awards at international animation festivals in Canada, France, Japan, and Italy. And these days, he directs independent animated films and has recently experimented with artificial intelligence software. So thank you both for joining us. And we'll start with Nye. Nye, you have a few things certainly to say about this, and particularly you had in a blog post that you recently posted called "Artificial Intelligence: A Primer for Graphics Artists and Educators." So I assume you have a few things to say about this subject.
I'm not really super prepared, but I'll talk a little bit about my intent behind that presentation and then the post. I just want more awareness on the subject itself. This is coming much faster and almost on a very alarming rate. I discovered it several years ago, and I was like, oh, it'd be kind of weird if that happened, but a lot of these things are happening. But I basically covered things like neural networks, how they're trained, how image models work. And then at the end of the post, I sort of said a couple of things about educators preparing for it. A lot of my feelings are based on documentation in the short term, but there's all kinds of stuff I can say. There's so many issues, ethics, problems, technical challenges, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, that's me sort of off the cuff, I guess.
Yeah, one of the things you had mentioned in that is, in terms for educators, has to do with documentation.
Mhm.
in terms of documenting the process. Like, how, as educators, do we check to make sure that students aren't passing off their own AI for their own work? So if you can
Yeah.
kind of, briefly speak a little bit about that.
So I think aside from artificial intelligence, I mean, I teach game development. I mean, I am an animator, but I came through games and now I'm sort of teaching. And so I teach a lot of game development. You can use asset packs already, right? You can go to the Epic Store or the Unreal Engine, which is the primary like big game engine that we use now, and you can get assets and you can put it in there. So already we're taking outside work and integrating into our process. And previs is the same way, right? In pre-visualization, we used to just use a lot of off the internet stuff and Turbo Squid and things like that. So I think there's a lot of trend towards us remixing and reusing things. And so I've always been big on, you need to document everything that you get or wherever it comes from. I also find students don't really understand this concept of intellectual property. So they don't understand that like this is owned or, it's free or Creative Commons or that kind of stuff. And so I think documentation is the first step for any of the conversations, at least for my students. I'll stop there if that makes sense.
Yeah, I found it quite interesting as someone who teaches animation history, that we're always worried about that final paper. And sometimes some students hand in something and we haven't talked to them about their process up to this point. I think that AI gives us an opportunity to kind of maybe, rethink how it is that we are going to document and assess student work by looking at the steps they take to get to what they write and how they think rather than that end product.
Yeah, and I can give you an example. One of the games that we just shipped, it's a great game that my students did fantastic, but they came on early on and said, we're going to use Cascador. I don't know if anyone sees Cascador. It's an AI sort of driven, machine learning driven software that does the arcs for you. So you can do more kind of action-based things. Is that cheating? Is that not? They were very transparent. They came to me. I talked to them about it. They developed a brand new workflow from Cascador to export into the Unreal Engine. And as a result, because they had pushed with this new software and saved time, of course, they all have jobs, right? I mean, they have jobs because they're creative and they're great at game development and all that kind of stuff. They're also just very talented students. But I think that's sort of the example that I'm trying to as a positive case, which is, hey, I see something that's going to make the art form better. I can tell a better story. I can make a better game. I'm going to be very transparent that I'm going to use it. I'm going to document it. I'm going to use it. And then hopefully you get the result on the other side. Because if you try to pass it off as your own, then it's like you're already making a conscious decision that you're trying to pass off your work for something that is generated. Does that make sense? I hope so.
Absolutely.
Chris, do you have any introductory thoughts to share with us?
No, except that I'm not in the education biz, so it's hard for me to speak about that. Students, what to tell students, what to prep them for. There's been so much rapid change lately. I mean, it's dizzying in the AI world. It's dizzying. I'm sure any of you that are mildly tuned into it have seen this. There's a handful of weekly breakthroughs that just make your head spin. So I don't envy any of you in the education business that are obliged with trying to teach kids what to prepare for. I can't imagine. I think maybe you should listen to your students. They might be ahead of you on this. It's just coming in from left field. Whatever you might teach them is obsolete the next week. There's a certain YouTube video I follow, several. It's amazing how many channels there are and people that follow this stuff. YouTube attracts these people that want to be spokesmen and that want to be arbiters. And there's one guy that puts out what's his name? Matt Wolf puts out something. The incredible breakthroughs of AI that you've missed this week. And they come out. So he tries to put one out every Friday. He does put one out every Friday. He's got a very interesting website, a blog, channel. He's a great source. He's not the only one that tries to put all this, wrap it up every week. And I try to catch his thing every week. YouTube feeds it to me. And it's just amazing. He's very thorough at following all this stuff. He follows not just the graphics stuff, but the chat GPT-4, GPT-5 was just, he just noticed that the name GPT-5 was just registered as a copyright. No one's announced the coming of GPT-5, but he saw that the name was just patented or copyrighted or something. But the platforms that are coming out, Leonardo and Midjourney and all these others, he keeps up on all that. And so weekly, I look at that and I go, oh my God, look what you can do now. In painting, out painting, content aware stuff, replacing sections. What is it? Runway ML is now animating still pictures. RunwayML.com. You can give them a still picture. It could be a still photograph you make, could be an AI picture that you make. Runway will look at that picture and say, well, let's see, that's a forest with a horse, and we've seen that before, so let's make the horse walk, and let's make the tree, the leaves in the pine forest move. It'll just analyze the picture and give it motion. And depending on what's in the picture, it'll give the appropriate motion. If it sees a car, it'll make the car move. If it sees a person, it'll make the person walk. If it sees a flower, it'll make it bloom. A bird, it'll make it go by. A sky. I mean, this is staggering, this level of AI. What's coming when it can do that? Right now, it gives you 4 seconds of video unless you pay more money or something. But to grab a still picture and just bring it to life, in a space of a minute, and the life that it's been given, the animation that's been given is completely driven by artificial intelligence.
Cito has something to say.
Staggering. Yes, Tom. You're muted, Tom.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Am I good? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So Tom Cito, University of Southern California. So just to add what Chris was saying and all, was was in the spring semester earlier this year, I was teaching a class in storyboard, and usually with storyboarding, there's always the issue about how rendered should your frames be, or how rough they should be, et cetera, and talking about the different degrees. And I remember I had a Chinese student who came in with a very well rendered storyboard, and what he had done was he had basically worked out the basic angles, like the basic staging of the storyboard. And then he told the AI, render this in the style of N.C. Wyeth using a blue-gray monochromatic palette. And it did it. And it did the entire board that way. And I'm like, it's like I can't say he's wrong, because I flash back on back in the 90s. I remember an older animation teacher at a friend of mine at UCLA was still insisting his students do their final films with cells and paint when the whole world had gone digital. Like everything was digital, cartoon color was shutting down, and the students actually went to actually complained to the dean and everything that like nobody's using this stuff anymore. So I didn't want to like step on him and say that what he did was wrong, because he did basically achieve the assignment, which was the staging.
So the input that he created was, at the very most, some sketches that would give you staging, camera angle, a few props, a few scenes, sets or something, line drawings, and it filled in, right?
Yeah, which is the nature of storyboard, which is just like, to work out the staging. And then the rendering is just like, how pretty you want to make it look, when you show it to people. So.
And the AI can do that now.
Yeah.
There are previs packages. You can almost feed it a script and it will It will block it out in frames.
I've been using it to write a model called Claude, which is I like a little bit better than ChatGPT. And in what has been the significant advance for me using it is that I've been able to feed it a PDF of essays that I've written previous, like the old-fashioned way, right? And then it can look at my style and the paragraph breaks and the kind of movement. And so I can write, say, hey, give me 300 words in 5 paragraphs about, you know, backgrounds or something like that, whatever. And it will go whoop. And I would say it's not great. It's maybe 65% of the way, but I get the structure of it. I get the through line, and it also gives me a jump off point for, you know, tightening it up or telling jokes or something like that. And so the speed that I'm getting by using a language model, the image models are just only doing motion. But as an animator, you know, is that approach that you just mentioned, Tom, about doing, you know, maybe I just need to do a series of sketches and then feed it through. Perhaps it could do the interpolation and figure these, and I'm almost certain that that's going to be happening. I don't know when, though. So.
Now, does this period seem, this threat or hope, feel different than other periods of immense technological change that both of you have experienced? I mean, is it different than Scanimate? Is it different than digital ink and paint? Is it different than CGI? Are all these fears kind of the same fears that people express at that moment, or are we truly at a different point here?
Chris.
Have we been here? If this seems more powerful than anything that's ever come along, as far as I'm concerned. This eclipses everything, and you hear things written about that. I wish I could quote you some, but you know, people are saying this is equivalent to, you know, the Gutenberg Bible or the invention of the wheel or something. It's tremendous. I don't think we understand the full impact yet. It's just beginning to unfold. There's a lot of talk and punditry about the extreme revolutionary power of this. I think we're all trying to figure it out. That's probably what we're here
I agree.
but I don't have any answers. I just know it's moving very fast.
My biggest terror is actually not the technology, it's that it's making us question some things in our society. Like IP, who owns what data has never been answered. And this is why Hollywood is striking and figuring out, right? And if there's going to be a lot of cascading problems that are going to come, I think, from this. And that is really kind of what, yes, the technology is moving very, very fast, but in the short term, we have not yet dealt with how, and that's how we make money, and that's how our economies run. And certainly as an artist, is someone going to take my data and then utilize my ability to animate an aggregate of everybody else's and get a huge advantage? It's definitely unique. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, it's puzzled the lawyers in the same way. It's totally unprecedented. Obviously, the magic that the machine does is culled from vast amounts of data, but it's so aggregated and mixed up and reassembled in this machine intelligence kind of way that it's unique. And you can't point to something and say there's a little bit of so-and-so's art in there. It's lost in there. So clearly it's used from scraping information off art and animation and pictures from the web, but not in any way that we've ever been able to you know, have a clear legal action that, you know, you stole somebody's art. It's 1/1,000,000th of a piece that was stolen. I think that, you know, this is still in the courts. They haven't figured it out either. It's really new territory. Tom.
Yeah. I think also, like, to put it in historical context, I remember in the 80s when CG was coming in, and people would, people in the traditional animation and film business would be saying, computers are coming, and what's more like that is the executives would be saying, when computers come in, we won't need all you people. Well, it's like we use less people and everything's going to be cheaper. So it's like, okay, so if you saw the movie Barbie, or a modern hit, or Super Mario Brothers, you see the credits and these Roman legions of names are going by. So obviously it's not fewer people. And the budget of Little Mermaid was 88 million, and the budget of Elemental was 285 million. So obviously it's not cheaper. So it did kind of work out that way. But I'm not poo-pooing like what might happen. I'm just saying, just in watching it in context, because I was thinking also about when computer music came in like 1981, and there was Chariots of Fire, and it was a synthesizer track. And you notice a lot of movies from the early 80s, like the first Terminator, and all have synthesizer tracks. And back then, the media was saying, there's going to be no more orchestras. There's going to be no more jazz bands. There's going to be no more rock bands. Everything's going to be synthesizer forever and ever. Amen. And then after a couple of years, everybody went back to traditional orchestras, or whatever, So, or stop motion after Jurassic Park. Everybody said that's the death of stop mo. And there's a lot of stop mo being done now. So I think like water, it's going to find its level. But what that level is, that's the question.
I mean, I think the landscape is going to change. I don't think large companies are going to need to be able to sustain a large number of people. The question is, will there be a lot of little companies and a lot of little things that come up? If you can create the same amount of content with far less people, does that mean we just have an explosion of content? Or, I mean, in order to satisfy the number of jobs or things, I think that it's a scale of productivity that we've not yet seen. So that's going to cause economic problems regardless, as opposed to just a technological shift like CG. I mean, the internet could be, right? Like the internet was supposed to do the same kinds of things and change jobs. But I'm sort of Chris's mindset. I feel like this is a very big transformative thing.
Kathy, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I just want to quickly say that I very much agree with Tom about the novelty of this and things settling down and finding their level. And I think that's what's in the near future for us with AI. This is making a big splash, and it will go through a bunch of evolutionary changes. And I do anticipate a backlash once it kind of finds its place. We're going to be, if we're not already, weary of a certain look that AI gives. Now, having said that, there's almost no limit to the different looks that AI can give you. But still, there's probably a limit to the maverick creativity, or a kind of creativity that's unique to humans that we're just not going to see. And as we get weary of what AI is so amazing, once we get over the dazzle and the amazement and the eye candy of it, I think real artists that are continuing to work with their own tools, their work is going to suddenly stand out and look more interesting, and our gaze is going to turn back to something really amazing that someone can do. So I think we're in for a tumultuous period as this dazzling thing comes by and catches our attention, until we kind of glaze over from looking at it. And then we're going to see some really cool film from an independent person, or a feature or something, a Henry Selick or something that can't be touched by AI. And it'll find a level. We've seen that, as Tom pointed out, with the CG, with music synthesizers, with a lot of technology that's come in and made a big splash. But we just have to hold onto the rail and ride this one through and see where it's going. I'm thinking suddenly right now, I don't know how many of you have seen some of the Peter Gabriel stuff, which I just discovered a few days ago. but Peter Gabriel, hey, I'm on a Zoom call.
Okay. All right, I'll tell you the whole story later about that.
Okay, my neighbor walking in. Something going on in the neighborhood. Peter Gabriel has said, and like, this is like a month ago or so or more, they came out with some words. He commissioned anybody, everybody, I don't know how he reached out, to remake all of his music videos with AI. And so all the classic Peter Gabriel videos are being remade multiple times by different young people with these tools. And there's dazzling stuff coming out. And also some of it's revolting. I sent it to some friends and they said, you know, it's awful. I can't stand looking at it. But some of the stuff I've seen has blown me away. But I think after I see a lot of that stuff, I will glaze over too. But initially, it's like, wow, you know, the video Sledgehammer has been made a dozen times now with AI. And then he's got a contest and they gave out prizes a month ago. So if you search for that, you'll see the prize winners. You'll see these recorded Zoom calls, these Zoom meetings of them giving away the awards to these different artists, and all this new work popped up I'd never seen. And then they'll tell you what tools they used. And, you know, a lot of times they're using multiple tools. This is an interesting thing. They use 5 or 6 different software packages. And I couldn't even, you know, tell you what they are, but they'll start here, run this through this thing, run this through something else, through After Effects, back through AI, feed it back through something. So there's a lot of education being happening to you know, teach yourself there by looking at, seeing what they're doing. There's a lot of self-learning online that can be done just by looking into this stuff.
That's amazing. Kathy, you had a question in the chat about its effect on the methods of teaching.
Yeah, I just thought that could be an interesting angle to look at, because things are changing just with methods like asynchronous learning, different models of learning. And I'm just kind of interested if there's any insights as to how AI may be affecting the profession of teaching.
Oh, you mean like there will be bots taking over our jobs?
Maybe.
The internet, I'm sure, again, I'm not in the teaching field, but there's so much you can teach yourself online that it really makes me, you know, wonder as a professor how you would stay relevant when you can dig all this stuff up on Reddit threads and Twitter threads, which are just buzzing with action right now with all these developments. There's huge crowdsourced communities that are avidly sharing equipment and tips and techniques, you know, in a very fresh hour by hour moment. There's a new version of this. Look what I did with this. How do you do that? Here's the prompt. Here's the code. Share it.
Yeah, I think if you look at like the Blender community, is doing what Chris is talking about, right? Like there's just all these videos about people and they're sharing this and that and they're building. You know, and I think that there's an awful lot of communities that are coming around different software ecosystems, but also different kinds of styles of work. And I think that trend is going to be another educational world. Like the university system, you know, is probably going to struggle because of the high price point when you can get lower costs by joining a number of communities and joining 50 different Discords or, you know, chat rooms. In terms of AI, certainly preparing syllabuses and things like that will accelerate in the next 6 months, right? It's really about what am I teaching today, and all the rest of it is probably just going to be, once you have a template in place, it's going to know. I know places like Khan Academy has Conmigo, which is pushing very forward on trying to create just like persistent teaching that actually has a bot that says, now, okay, why don't you try again? Oh, well, you got that one wrong, but doesn't like just gives a note. It's actually talking and teaching and coaching. So I 100% think bots will come in. I don't think my class will be taught tomorrow by a bot, but in a very near future, will there be a bot that they can ask the top frequently asked questions and then get the latest syllabus and all that stuff through? I think that's going to be very, very soon.
Well, you know, we didn't have online classes until 30 years ago, right? And having online classes didn't put colleges out of business. You know, and the same goes for all the technology. I've been teaching for 19 years now, and you know, my job does get easier and easier because of the technological advances. So hopefully we can just keep thinking of this as a tool.
And I want to add that, just to use a word that Chris said, at least from the educator viewpoint, is that it's dizzying. You know, that, I mean, this is overwhelming, you know, from an educator standpoint, particularly, you know, that, wow, my students may be way ahead of the game than me. I'm not prepared for this. How much time do I have to somehow be ready in such a fast time? Like, how do I keep up with all this stuff? Like, you know, where do I turn? How do I look? What's my syllabus going to look like? I mean, you know, certainly things so changed, like whenever ChatGPT emerged, was it March or April, in which all of a sudden I'm getting 3 of the same papers at the end of the semester. And then I'm going, oh, what is the fall going to look like? So I think it's, you know, kind of, that I just wanted to share that this dizzying feeling perhaps is what a lot of people, you know, also feel. And it's scary and on certain days, and invigorating, you know, on the other.
Yeah, when we were talking, you were talking, Nye, I think you mentioned that, you know, there's a lot of online references for how to learn how to do this. And my first thought was, well, Maya has that, and Toon Boom has that, where you can go online and you can learn the software. But what keeps us in business is that we're the experts. It's like, yeah, you can learn that software, but we're going to teach you how to apply it in the entertainment business because we've been there and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's happening so fast. It's like, how quickly do we have to be the experts at this particular new technology?
I still think storytelling though. There's
Yeah,
a question, sorry.
absolutely. Oh, we got a couple of questions.
Sorry.
Mr. Shu.
Yeah, thanks. By the way, Tom, thanks for the invite on this. This is really cool that you guys are doing this. So, you know, I've been teaching for 23 years at both community colleges and at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. And every year, about every 5 years, I see a kind of a generational shift in thinking. And one of the things I've noticed is the lack of attention span from younger students. Like, I'll literally, you know, for those of us that grew up in an area where the library was where we had to go to get information, and now it's available to us, you know, it's like King Solomon's mine, right? There's literally nothing you can't find out on the internet, and there's videos and YouTubes and books and everything. It's like glorious to us, but I've literally had students pull up a video and go, oh, it's 5 minutes. I'm not going to watch that. It's too long. Right. So there are outlying students who are super dedicated and will spend hours and hours and hours learning Unreal or Blender or whatever there needs to be. But I think in general, those are outlier students. And I've seen a trend where lack of attention, and I've seen this from my students at SMU, the reason they sign up for in-person classes is because they're not disciplined enough to literally sit for 2 or 3 hours and learn by themselves. So I, you know, from that aspect of, will teachers be required? Yes, for younger, it's our universal form of babysitting for parents that work is, you know, so I don't see robots babysitting kids very well. I think kids would run all over robots, and especially small kids. They would learn the loopholes, and you would have a classroom full of no kids because they fooled a robot, right? That's how, what I could see happening there. But older kids, I don't think would respect a robot. They might use it as a guide or a tool, but I think humans like to learn from humans. And that's just a thing that I think, at least in the next foreseeable future, I think that's going to be something that still sticks around from that education point of view. from the industry point of view, and this is to what earlier, my question to this group would be this, and I'm a motion graphics guy. That's After Effects and everything. That's my bag. The look and feel that you get from running through multiple AIs is like a recipe. How do you see that from a larger feature film, a consistent animation across that? Does that make sense? Like if you have small studios that are taking on particular shots and they're running it through various AIs and filters and everything else, discerning professionals are going to see quality or aesthetic differences between shot to shot. How do y'all as professionals see us maintaining that if there is no consistency in the flow, right, within a feature film? I'm just curious on that. What do y'all think?
I have something on that, but Dory, you've had your hand up. You want to ask that first? Then?
Well, I actually think I've got the teacher's side of the question. He just asked for the industry, which is, what is it that we actually bring to a classroom? And, you know, as somebody who crossed over the cusp of 2D to 3D animation, it isn't that I can't teach students to make good 3D films. I just can't teach students to make 3D films. So there has to be a teacher in the department who can teach students to make 3D films. So that it's what do we really offer as a teacher, and then what can we do as individual teachers to be sure we understand what is a quality story, and how you know, what is an artistically coherent or an artistically exciting new design principle. I sent an article to Lee, and I will try and Kevin and I will try to find that link and make sure it gets posted somewhere, about a writer who tried using chat to rewrite fairy tales, which are, you know, have been around for a long time and are really talk about the psychology of the human race. And it was a really interesting sort of article to discuss how you could tell, you know, what was missing and how did it work. And I think it's similar to what I've heard said here, which is it gives you a place to start, but you need to be able to put it together. And it was hard for me to let go of the idea that everybody needs to learn 2D before they learn 3D, which is like totally bogus, and we all know that now. And I think that's that cusp that we have to cross as teachers. What do we actually have to offer our students that can't be imitated, at least yet, by a computer? And I think that that's setting the bar, saying, yeah, and what else can you do? How else can you improve this? Where does it go from here? That's my take on it.
So what I think both of you sort of mentioned, and this is true, is the mental health of the students who've spent all of their time being, some software is designed very manipulatively, and we're moving into a world where TikTok is all generated, as well as creating procedural systems for open worlds. We don't know what's going to happen, and I think personally, I think that might be part of the reason the attention drop. I think for me, I spend more time now trying to teach confidence. It doesn't matter what it is. And then problem solving related to that confidence. So if you're doing something technical and you have a problem, they're gonna self-psych themselves out before they even figure out the graph editor or whatever, right? So and I think this will be particularly the case as we move into a more generative world where most of our content is generated, that they're gonna have more emotional balance. There's these things at SCAD called accommodations, and we're getting an awful lot of them. And I'm very worried. I am very worried about the next generation of students. That's the first response. The second thing is about data, which is kind of now becoming like a mission for me, which is we need to stop putting it on the internet and work locally, and then start parsing, be aware that this data is now being aggregated elsewhere. And so if you have a particular value as an educator, a syllabus, or as an artist, you need to control your data set. So you're asking about consistency from shot to shot. If there's a data set that I am in control of, I can do those consistent across the board. So as an animator, I worked on one shot. And as a previs artist, I do sequences. But now with generative media, I could probably do whole swaths of information. If I'm using Microsoft's data set, I'm just one in an army of people. But if I actually have something unique in my own data set and my own tooling and my own recipes, and I control that locally for at least a percentage of time, I don't know how long, I think you can defend yourself. So confidence in terms of teaching is certainly what I'm going into. And then the other one is controlling your own data locally, or finding ways to control your own data locally.
If I could just supplement what Nye said, that we're all seeing a lot of accommodation at the university, and ASU is Arizona State, where I teach, is the largest university, and it seems over half of students in a 38-person class has some kind of accommodation. And I think that what we can do as educators, as what Nay is saying, is like it's instilling confidence. These are the things AI can't do. Instilling confidence, and I teach writing, motivation, problem solving, critical thinking, throw in some grace, as long as you can. And this just goes back to what Nye was saying about process. I mean, identify certain students and assist them at certain steps of the process so they can come out from your classroom, not necessarily with just some grade, but to have improved. I mean, you can't do everything, but to improve in a certain spot where they need improvement, and give them the confidence to carry that to the next class.
I'm gonna comment, if I may. I'm dyslexic, and I talked to a Disney Imagineer, and he was telling me, he said, if you're Imagineer, you're either left-handed or dyslexic. And I didn't learn how to read until I was in the 4th grade. And what got me out of special ed classes was the fact, and you can see I kind of read still, but I was an extrovert, so I was able to talk. And because I wasn't introverted, they said, oh, well, we can tell he has higher level functioning and stuff like that. So we know he's not stupid. So either he's lazy or there's something we don't know. I'm seeing a lot of autistic kids in my classes. In the community college, I used to have an autistic student maybe every other class. And that was like 10 years ago. Now half of my class has some sort of accommodation, or to y'all's point, I don't know whether it's we are now recognizing that people are neurodiverse and we're taking it into consideration, or whether it's really an uptick, based on environmental or real things. What I will say, though, is I think our education system needs to rethink how we work with and these folks that are neurodiverse. So some of the dyslexic, and show me an editor who's not ADHD, or, most of the creatives and musicians I've met are ADHD at some level, or, whether they're diagnosed as adult or don't know, I think creativity is there. How we learn how to help these folks become the best creatives possible is something that higher education has been reluctant to address, and even lower education, right? They say, well, that kid has special needs, so let's take them out of the classroom and have them have a special teacher, instead of rethinking how do we now teach. And this comes back to AI. AI is now, it's not just about answers. It's not just about memorizing answers like we used to in our foundational education system. That's gone out the door, right? I mean, in terms of when you have Chat GPT and with the right data set, there you go. I mean, why do you need to memorize things anymore? Because it's there for you. Now it's, how do I use this information to problem solving in unique and interesting ways? And that we've never been good, in my opinion, in most disciplines at well, been really good at teaching good problem solving. And I think it's that lower education is horrible right now because it's test proctoring to the SAT and everything else. So I went political, I'll shut up. But there was some targets there. There was some buttons pressed when we talked about, you know, making accommodations. I think we need to rethink how we're teaching. Anyways, I'll shut up.
I posted a Word document in the chat from my friend Tom Mazzocco. Several of you know him. And I hope you'll get a kick out of it. He said that he asked Chat GPT to write a joke, and he gave it a set of, you know, 3 or 2 guys in a boat, one's tall and one's short. I think that was the setup. So I hope it's not funny. That's what's so funny about it, is that none of them are funny, right? So Chat GPT doesn't know how to be funny. So check that out if you want to. The other thing that came to my mind was, could Chat GPT storyboard Bambi's mother getting killed to the same level of emotion that, I mean, we're all traumatized by that scene, right? And I don't know if you've seen it lately or analyzed it, but it's some amazing storyboarding. And then of course, combined with the animation and the voices and the music, but the storyboarding itself is just, it's just one of the greatest examples of action storyboarding and emotional, tearing your heart out storyboarding. So just something to think about. Cito?
Yeah, I think you know, it was hit on here a little earlier about the way to teach is to sort of focus on the idea of teaching critical thinking and theory. One thing that I noticed, you know, because I was teaching, you know, traditional animation for a very long time and traditional storyboarding, and you'll always get like in every class, you always get the student who goes, yeah, theory, bullshit. Yeah, where's the magic button? Show me the magic button. I can hit the button and I'll be an animator. And like, no, it's not that easy, you know. And I go, yes, it is, you know. So that kind of group is always going to be there, and there's always going to be folks to go for the quick one. But it's encouraging people to think outside the norm and outside, and how to reinterpret is, you know, are the ones that are going to be the trendsetters. They're going to move forward. So we have to think of a way to encourage that kind of thinking beyond, but it based on traditional skills, you know, just traditional skill sets. When I got out of school, people didn't really want high quality character animation anymore. You know, in the 70s, people would say, oh, all that Pinocchio Bambi shit you guys like, that all went out with the Great Depression. That's never coming back. Never. You know, nobody saw 15 years in the future The Little Mermaid, you know, like that was going to happen. You know, it was impossible, but then it did. You know, just like, you know, I don't think anybody could have predicted that in the future, you know, like 50 years in the future, everyone's going to have long beards. That's pretty strange, you know, but I think it is that kind of never say never thing, you know, in a way. But I think that getting back to the idea about teaching a way of critical thinking, you know, beyond the button pushing.
Well, Patrick, you got a question. I was going to say something
it feeds right into what Tom was saying. So, you know, a lot of the work when you're coming out of school, going into the industry, right? It's all the work that the really great people, the established people don't want to take on, right? In the old days, you know, betweening all of that stuff, right? Or ink and paint and all of that stuff. And that's the stuff that personally, not knowing that much about AI, I see that being taken on by AI. So how are these students going to make that transition from school into industry if those jobs aren't there anymore?
I agree with that too. The first I want to talk about, and then I'll come back to that, because I think, Lee, you brought up how can we do the Bambi storyboard, in AI or Shere Khan or whatever, some great thing in that. You can't. But most of the work is what Patrick is saying is, yes, you still need the milk call for the key, but once, you're doing a tiger, I get it now, and then it's going to take over for you at a certain point. The acceleration that's going to happen from individuals will mean less people. So yes, like I'll leave it up and I'll go to sleep, and the next morning I'll have 100 different iterations on it. So if I'm looking for an opening shot, do I want an 85 millimeter or a 35 millimeter? Well, I'll just run 50 of them, see which one I kind of like that one, and you start mixing it together. Ultimately, yes, the empathy or the emotions or whatever has to come out from, but it's the speed that we're going to be able to iterate and move very quickly. And yes, Patrick, I am totally freaking out about that as somebody who I feel the responsibility to put a whole bunch of new students into the industry in my, and it would used to be, hey, you do quality control in the video game industry, and that's all being automated now, right? So how do I get kids in the game jobs? It might be that they have to be more entrepreneurial. If you've got the ability to make something awesome, maybe they just have to take the initiative to try to get over that hump and go indie if we can find business models for it. I don't know the answer to that. Got a lot of kids I want to get jobs.
Johan, you had said some things in the chat before about how will things be different. You were saying it's still evolving on a daily basis, weekly basis. Can we really already see what will change? I think that was your question. And I think you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little bit puzzled because there must be opportunities in this, and there are threats in that. And I'm still not sure. Is it just a tool? Will it revolutionize the system in total? I can't see it because it's still evolving. So do we have some ground that will stay the same? Or will it change everything? I do not know. What is your opinion?
What do you think, Chris?
Well, one thought I'm having is that as it changes the emphasis on what's valuable and what needs to be taught, and what needs to be learned, where that used to be cutting edge skills, we have machines with cutting edge skills now. It sort of chases us back to our foundation where principles are becoming the much more valuable thing. Who is it talking about attention spans that are shortening? It's getting to be so that maybe the things that need to be taught are socializations, mental health, artistic principles, animation principles, storytelling, the 3-act structure. There's a lot of visual, artistic principles about contrasts and textures and color theory and things that AI gets right sometimes by accident or by training. But foundational principles, it seems, are getting more important. And I mean both, in making art, in making animation, but just goddamn mental health. It sounds like you guys are seeing students that are slipping, emotionally. We've had 3 years of pandemic, which in a college student's life is an epic part of their life. 3 years of their life has been screwed up by quarantine and isolation, and they're all hurting inside from emotional stuff, and you're coming along trying to teach them animation. It's there might be some really fundamental things that might be more important. I don't know, I mean, mental health is part of it, but in terms of the domains you're all working in, the falling back on fundamental principles of, again, storytelling, archetypes, 3x structure, character development, art principles, social principles, storytelling basics, these kind of things. I don't think AI is going to deliver those. We have these incredible tools at our disposal, but I think people don't know what to do with them. I was around when the software Flash was developed. I was, beginning to learn computer. This was 25, 30 years ago, Flash or something. And I found a little niche teaching through Linda Weinman's training business. She gave me a role teaching animation principles because all these people were learning Flash. And what did they do with Flash? They made type roll and tumble, and they made things come in and go out and up and down and left and right, and all the things that Flash did really easily with keyframes, but they didn't know the good old principles, the John Lasseter principles, that he got from the 9 Old Men, squash and stretch, acceleration. And I found a niche teaching that stuff at Flash conventions. I would go to Flash conventions. I had a little 1-hour presentation I gave. And people may have known they were going there to learn the software. Yeah, but what are you doing with it? And does your stuff have life? They were moving letters around. And after they took my class, the letters had life. It had bounce and stretch, and it came to life a little bit because I taught them a few principles. I think we're in that kind of place now where something newer has emerged as being more valuable, which is the old stuff we don't want to lose sight of. I'm sure it's the kind of stuff Tom teaches, being the old guy that he is. We're the 9 Old Men now, right, Tom? Weren't they 30 when they were called the 9 Old Men? They were 30, right? When they got that name. But God damn it, that's, you can lose wisdom in one generation. We can't let this wisdom slip away in one generation and being dazzled by the eye candy of this magic tool that's come along.
The Flash analogy is not bad because there was all these websites with intros, just intros everywhere. And it was like, oh my gosh, how do I get out of this, right? Most of it was bad. But you're right, there was some that rose to the top and used it as a tool. And we have some animated properties that were entirely sort of predicated on Flash. So
few people knew what they were doing, got hold of that tool. Mostly people with no background got hold of the tool.
And they did it without cleanup artists or a whole row of people. It was one person taking control of a lot more, right? Or also the web comics, right? That was a printed medium. Now you can do it on the internet, and web comics exploded. Not everyone can put up a web comic, but very few actually gain the traction to shake through. The analogy I like to think about to answer Johan's question about what are we thinking toward is I go back and look at and talk about historical context, what happened to the music industry, right? So the LA Philharmonic Orchestra is perhaps the best in the world, and they get together and they play once and they're all specialists. But like the Chemical Brothers or something are two guys on stage with a whole bunch of mixed data, right? And they've built a mass and following of millions of people. They're both music. They're different kinds of art forms, but also Napster allowed us to share things and change things in the record company. And they basically destroyed a lot of the infrastructure of what the music industry was before then. Music industry is very changed now. I mean, Steve Jobs stepped in, and we all know that story. So that's the one that I look at in terms of a model that I feel like we're headed towards, because now it's not just the music or the audio, it's the visual and everything else that comes with it.
But is the driving force at the moment not the wish to have this magic button Tom was speaking about, to create a magic button for everyone to make something move, to make something like something great from the past? Isn't that the driving force at the moment, that everybody can do that now?
The driving force is Silicon Valley making tools that they can democratize and own the data sets of, and that's capitalism, I think. So if I can make the next Adobe, right? I see myself as this is a computer paradigm shift. If I'm Runway, I see the opportunity to be the next Adobe, and I push myself there, and then I hit my users that way. That's what I feel is the driving force for a lot of the rapid advances, because these models are growing in aggregate as they grow in data size.
But what human need are they trying to advance? There must be some need in the in all humans that they want to serve.
So if I want something creatively done, do I contract someone for $1,000, or do I just write a sentence and push a button? I mean, that's the crux of the issue right now. And if I'm going to,
there's slightly more, in my opinion. There's something that if I'm totally free of talent, I can make it just by typing something into a machine.
Yeah.
That makes me feel talented. There's a human need in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something they want to approach now. And that's why everybody is trying it out.
Yeah, that goes back to, just because you have Word, though, doesn't mean you're a writer, right? I mean, you know,
exactly.
having access to the tools, you know, I mean, I think, ooh, I can write a story. Chat GPT, tell me a fairy tale, you know, a good mix on a fairy tale. For someone that hasn't written, they now feel like they have created something using this tool. And I think you're right. It gives them a sense of fulfillment, because that's something that they wouldn't have had access to unless they would have hired a writer, right? They have this idea in their mind, and they want to get it tangible. So now I can create this picture of Bugs Bunny destroying New York, right? But, you know, because I can type in these things. But, you know, quality, that, you know, that's a different issue, right? I mean, you have to know something about writing to know whether Chat GPT has given you a quality story or not. And at least at this level, I've never seen Chat GPT or Midjourney produce something. Now, I have seen people tweak the recipe where they have a sequence of comics with the same character from different perspectives telling a story. I've seen that from a few people in using generative AI for that. That's intriguing to me, because then you're keeping a quality level, shot to shot, scene to scene, that is consistent. That's different than generating one image and having almost zero control and letting that algorithm decide what that next version of that image is, right? That's getting back to that original thing. How do you control the look, feel, consistency with these things, right? That, I don't know, that's an art in itself.
Well, plus that gets back to the empathy thing, you know, a good story, even though I know that there are teenagers and people in their early 20s who write great music and stories, still that had to come from somewhere. They have had their heart broken, or they've seen somebody have their heart broken, or they've held a baby, or they've been really afraid, or whatever. And that feeds the creativity. And I think that artists and entertainers are storytellers and communicators, even fine artists who paint. You know, I was thinking before about the abstract modern art movement of the early 20th century came out of photography. Photography was suddenly able to depict reality. So these modern artists said, okay, well, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to splatter some paint on a canvas. We're going to communicate that way, you know?
Yeah.
So
Great art comes from the heart. If you feel somebody singing a song that you've heard before, but that performer's voice, it makes the hairs in the back of your neck stand up. It can be a song you've heard 1,000 times, but that unique performer brings something special to it that is human and unique. And I think that's the missing component of AI that we're talking about, that empathy, that feeling that it's coming from a place. Can AI fake that? That's going to be an interesting question in the future, right? I mean, now humor, you guys were saying, I've seen the AI comedian stuff. It's horrible, right? And you know, I don't know if AI can write a compelling love story yet, you know, or something like that. But, you know, yeah, anyways.
I mean, I always tell people, I mean, I always tell my students that, you know, in terms of interpreting things as an artist, I said, like, you know, you take things like the sinking of the Titanic. The Titanic sinking was an event that happened, but what makes it, you know, appealing to audiences? And I said, you could do the Titanic sinking from the Kate Winslet, Leonardo DiCaprio love story. You could do the entire movie from the captain's point of view. You could do the entire movie from the iceberg's point of view. You could do it from the point of view of a guy shoveling coal in, you know, on the bottom of the ship. It's what story you want to tell, you know, and then you say, okay, you know, that's the way Cameron directed it. Maybe Kubrick would direct it differently. Maybe Hitchcock would direct it differently. You know, it's still the same story, but it's your interpretation. And you know, and hopefully there'll be future Hitchcocks and future, you know, Camerons that, you know, yet to be born. But our job is to kind of launch them out of, you know, out of the egg, and, you know, until they take their first steps, you know, and hopefully guide the future Kubricks.
So does anyone have anything to say about how this could be regulated, since that's what the writers and actors strikes are somewhat focused on?
I do, but it's like Swain has a question.
Yes, Swain.
Hi, Mark Swain. I worked at Disney for about 13 years and NVIDIA, so I know a lot about AI. And thank you for having a positive conversation about AI, because I'm really sick of the media at this point. Just portraying it as this evil thing, and it's really not. It's just a tool. I mean, I started at Disney when I was kind of one of the guys ushering the 2D guys out of the building, because I was building the entire CG pipeline for the movie Dinosaur back in the day. And so, you know, and I'd tell people I was doing computer animation, they thought I was a programmer. So they go, oh, you program, you type on the keyboard and you program this stuff. And so they didn't know. And it's like, no, we don't feed storyboards into the computer and get a result out. Now, what does that sound like? It really does sound like you do that, but there's no temporal cohesion between a lot of stuff. So you can type stuff in, but you're going to get a different image all the time, because that's how neural networks work. That it's really hard to keep them consistent. It's really hard to keep them in line. In fact, Tom, when you were talking about the storyboards, I was wondering if they actually looked the same from frame to frame, because that seems like that would be a temporal thing to keep those, like keep that same character that you want to have throughout it, or a comic book, or any kind of visual guides like that. Because when you type stuff in, by nature, the AI is going to give you something different. That's just how it works. But one of the big positive things I see from this, because when I was in school, I actually didn't study any of this. I studied writing and problem solving and how to get things done. And I think AI right now is this problem solving thing that's going to help people really hone what they actually want. Like, I can't tell you how many directors would walk by my desk at various studios and ask me for something. They'd come back, nope, that's not what I said. Nope, that's not what I want. Whereas you could have an AI spit out 300 things and kind of gear them towards what you want to do. Or the big thing that people don't really pay attention to is the problem solving of the prompts. So like, I want a landscape that's in an Aztec forest with some kind of temple and this stuff. And it's like, you draw it and it's like, nope. What I really want is an Aztec forest with moss on the trees and vines. And so as you do this, you're honing your world, you're honing your what you actually want to make. And you take that stuff and you put it all together from lots of different sources in order to get it. So what does this mean? It just means that you have to break down the problem until you have the problem small enough, until you can put all those solved problems back together. And AI, I think, is what's helping do that. So, and is it going to create less people? Absolutely not. Holy crap. CG there's like there's companies everywhere doing CG. It's going to create, in fact, I saw I think it was New York Times. There's an article yesterday where they're hiring like unbelievable amounts of people for AI to specifically do AI work for Hollywood. So you know, and what the media is putting out for like the actors and all that stuff, digital scanning, but we've been able to create people and visual effects for years. We're not scanning people. We don't need to do that. We don't need to have some dude come in and have them scanned. We can just make them if we really wanted to. So we don't need to do that. And to make something that's convincing as an actor on stage takes what, like 400 people instead of just having one good actor. So the argument kind of fails a lot. Anyway, that's what I got to say, but thank you for having a positive conversation, because it's been annoying seeing all the negative parts about it. So anyway, there you go.
I think just to jump in on what you were saying is that, you know, for all the negativity about it and all, every revolution has casualties. There's always going to be a certain amount of displacement. The way that, you know, when movies went to sound, the musicians local dropped by like 60% or something, because there were a lot of theater orchestras. There are a lot of orchestras in movie theaters playing for silent films that weren't necessary. So there's always a bit of replacement, just like when things went to CG and a lot of traditional ink and paint and everything went away. But then, like you say, there's other jobs, more jobs are created. You know, I mean, you know, everybody, a lot of the actors that are worried about being displaced, we've had massive since what, 2001? I think, you know, with Lord of the Rings, you know, before that, when you wanted an army, you know, fighting, you had to go hire Franco's army or you know, go find a fascist country with an army with nothing to do, you know, and pay them, you know. Now it's all massive, you know, and you know, nobody was screaming then, you know, about replacement. So I think that kind of stuff is inevitable, but like you said, it's like new things are created at the same time.
Yeah. John mentions in the chat that he's asking, is there any productions? And I think that's what's interesting is that's what's happening now is we're seeing AI, but we're not actually seeing it. So I know that there's a commercial shop in Santa Monica that renders every other frame now and lets AI do the interpolation between it. And you would expect that would save them huge amounts of rendering costs, depending on what the compute is on the AI. Or there's shops outside of Boston that do video production that I know, and that they're using Runway now to do green screen as opposed to like After Effects, or, you know, and they're sped up their green screening process. So I think those are already happening very, very quickly. And that might also not be AI, like, you know, the Unreal Engine, there's productions now that only have 3 lighters as opposed to having 12. So I think productions are definitely going to get smaller. The question is, does that mean there's going to be a lot of productions? You know, and that means maybe a handful of people could rival the size of a Pixar film or something, right? That's very exciting, but it's also, you know, depending on who you are, it could be terrifying.
Yeah, I think whether we're going to have more productions is kind of the big question. I had read James Hibbert wrote in the Hollywood Reporter about how the Secret Invasion, which someone was bringing up in the chat, along with The Witcher and The Mandalorian, these CGI heavy shows, that the recent seasons, just very recently, aren't doing well, and about stretching the creative community, you know, too thin in these. So. And that's because of the studios wanting what he called more, faster content. But now we have the studio cutbacks, we have the studio belt tightening, and we have this strike. So the question is, you know, will we have, once this is sorted out, hopefully, are we going to have more productions that, you know, are going to continually feed the pipeline of these streamers, because that's where the big business is, and that's what they need to, in a way, keep their subscriber base happy to, or they'll go somewhere else. So it's just really curious. It's that, okay, how do you maintain a steady supply of new content while dealing with this new technology, while also keeping, you know, the quality of that content good? I mean, it's I don't know.
Yeah, that reminds me, I have HR people that reach out to me all the time because they're like, hey, we're looking for somebody who's really, really good at 3D. I go, okay, cool. and we want them to be amazing at video editing. I go, okay. And they go, and we want them to be a top-notch motion graphics person. Right. And they go, we can't find that person. And I go, because they don't exist. I go, if you're a video editor, that's what you do every day. And you're really good at composing and pulling together stories. If you're a motion graphics guy, you're really good at understanding how to bring elements and motion graphics to life. I go, you know, and if you're a 3D guy, man, that even goes to another world, right? Because not everybody's a great rigger, texture artist, character designer, and everything else. My question is, if you have AI doing all those things for you, are you still able to know quality work when it's output or not? Right? I mean, if the AI is doing your rigging and doing your character design and doing your audio and doing your music and doing your thing, as human beings, aren't we going to pick up that this is really right? You know, it's like having your website designed by AI. Pretty soon that pattern's going to go that all the websites are going to look the same, and it's not going to be anything worth looking at. I don't know, thoughts?
I mean, people watch TikTok for hours at a time. That's not really good content. I mean, it is, I guess. It's specifically targeted to their impulses and their instincts. Right? People play Fortnite for months at a time and socialize and work in Fortnite. So yes, in the model of like, is this one shot of a quality that we've been doing? But the question is that really going to matter? Because I think we're just going to be setting up automated systems that are just going to continue to procedurally generate stuff. That's particularly susceptible to people of a generation who have been bred on generative algorithms feeding them content. So,
but there's a huge difference between coming up with 30 seconds or a minute of recording yourself on camera saying something and telling a really good long form story, right?
I agree with you. Will they watch it, or have they been snagged by the engagement loop, which is being architected into the software and now is being empowered by AI?
I guess
Well, maybe it's related. Well, maybe it's just related to the fact of what am I paying for it? You know, am I getting it for free versus I'm not? I mean, kind of some of the backlash, you know, that people that greeted like something like Quantum Mania had to do with, wow, I just spent, you know, $25, you know, with popcorn or parking and this is what I got. And so, you know, I think I always imagine, okay, well, your expectations are different depending on, you know, what you're doling out, you know, from your wallet.
We went for a very long time where there was a local storyteller in every village. If that local guy down the road is making the next blockbuster, maybe we just all support him, you know? I don't know. Like, do we have to go to the movie theater and get lost in parking and compete with the 405? I also tell my kids a story every night. I enjoy those stories much more than I do going into the corporate studio and slaving away, right? I mean, if I could find a way to continue to tell stories for a small group of kids, the reach is much bigger over here, but you're in a largest. I just think there's going to be some interesting things that we're going to face once productivity, once less people are able to do lots more. I think it just makes an interesting economic system. And you're right. What is the business model?
This is back to Kevin's point and to Nye's point. I don't think that there's going to be less people. I really don't. And the reason is because as CG has progressed over the years, when we got a new feature of something, say you could do like fancy reflections on stuff. Director wants all the reflections. Suddenly we can do like, you know, really cool shadows in the rooms that makes them look real. Director wants all of that. So everything that's new and nifty takes a long time to do, but they still want it. What does that take? It takes more people. And so AI, yes, it can generate a lot of stuff, but every nifty little thing is going to take a little trick, a little work, another person to get that done. And tools like you were talking about, like green screen and stuff, we've been using that stuff for years. I've been using upscaling for years. It's been AI. So it predicts where the pixels are going to be and it scales the image up. That's very handy too. That is in the true sense of a tool. It's not like you're typing a, please make this bigger at this resolution. No, it's just like, make this bigger and make it look good, because it upscales better than like Photoshop. So tools like green screen tools and things like that, those are just generally helpful to production to make you a little faster during compositing and stuff like that. But things that are features that like a director is going to latch onto, those will go, I need that and I cannot have anything else, but it takes 48 hours of frame to render. I don't care. That's what I want. And that's how you'll get more people doing the AI stuff and more tools and things like that. So that's what I think about that.
I agree to an extent. I think that the large models will probably add more people because there'll be larger spectacles that have to compete. So you probably will have hundreds of people working on spectacles. But in the game industry, you can have 3 guys get together and they can make a game with Unity and they can distribute it on Steam. And if they have the user base, they might make $1 million. Now, from a big studio, that's nothing. But for 3 guys who worked on a game, you know, $1 million is a lot of money. So if a lot of people can make of a certain level quality content very quickly and have business models, then you have the opportunity to make a lot more content. What is our palette and can we sustain that? But I think you're right. The big companies will probably get bigger. I know for a fact that companies like Microsoft are just looking to grow as much as humanly possible, right? The Activision deal and things like that. So they just want to create massive amounts of content so more people will come onto their servers. And it doesn't look like Microsoft is going to shrink right now. So I agree with you. But I think there's going to be hopefully there'll be a larger balance. Will be more opportunity where smaller groups of people can make content.
I did see an article. It was in one of the Silicon Valley magazines, and it was like the next big startup, and it was a picture of 3 people walking down the street, and it was like just 3 people, and it was a whole article about AI and how they could like start a whole company, get venture capital, and just go for it. It was a standard Silicon Valley kind of article where you could get rich and famous by buying a lottery ticket or something. But yes, you are correct. In the gaming world, you can make really cool titles that are for a phone, for VR, for whatever.
Right.
And you could have a really small team to do that. But I was talking more about the Marvel people that are just, they are really kind of ruining the industry in a lot of ways, because they are hammering people into the ground. So you as instructors, you should know if your students go to work on Marvel movies, they will be hammered into the ground and not get to go home and have to work 7 days a week. And if you don't do it, you don't get hired back.
Right.
So
that's why I left the industry.
That's the kind of world we live in now. And it's like, and if anybody needs a union, is the CG animators and or the visual effects artists, because it's just, they're not represented at all. Like Oppenheimer, the director left off 80 visual effects artists from the credits. He said there was no visual effects. But all the visual effects were composite artists and invisible stuff you can't see, so he left them all out of the credits. Anyway, off topic.
No, it's actually on topic. I mean, I keep thinking about Rhythm and Hues, right?
Yeah.
What happened with Rhythm and Hues in Life of Pi. And, the director is getting up there taking credit for a film that was heavily visual effects as the experience that was created. And he didn't even give a nod to all.
I'll tell you a story about that. One of my friends was the head of that, and he was working at Rhythm and Hues for years. And the director came and he didn't like some of the visual effects for that. Well, how they wrote the contract in that is that if Rhythm and Hues did not do, like, I don't know, I think it was 60% of the shots over the way he wanted them, then they were void on their contract. And what did that do? That sent them into Chapter 11 right after the movie ended.
Right. So
the studio forced them into closure pretty much from that movie. And they won an Academy Award at the same time.
Kathy or Cito, did you want to say anything about CG animators being unionized?
Well, I think, I mean, just speaking from a historical standpoint, the visual effects kind of fell into this weird little crack between live action and animation, where for many years, the visual effects unit on a live action movie was very small. It was always like some guys building miniatures or somebody blowing something up or something like that. That's the way it was before CG. Then it all became animators. But in the meantime, they made this distinction and jurisdiction between a live action film and an animated film. And there was a psychological kind of attitude also back then that it was kind of demeaning to work on cartoon work. Like there's cartoons and then there's real movies, like grown-up movies. So the studios exploited that gap between the two. Now there's like so much animation now. You look at Guardians of the Galaxy, and the raccoon is done by keyframe, and Groot is done by keyframe. So that's animated. It's an anime, Avatar is an animated movie to me. Nobody went to Avatar to watch, Sigourney Weaver smoke a cigarette in a laboratory. It was all the big blue people running around. But the problem was at the key moment when there was never a visual effects union, a guild set up and everything. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And now that the industry is kind of decentralized, so it'd be even harder to put something like that together. Not impossible, but I think that there has to be a lot of motivation, for it to happen.
Okay, we are past 7:30. So, Chris, did you have any closing words?
Good luck, you educators. Good luck. I don't envy your challenge. Listen to your students as much as you want them to listen to you. And then get yourselves on social media and follow the Twitter threads. This guy that walked in my house a moment ago that interrupted me, this is my friend David, who lives up the street. He's got one of these minds that can definitely focus for more than 3 minutes. He rings me up in the morning almost daily to tell me the latest thing on Stable Diffusion, Dream Booth, Midjourney, this new stuff. And he's got the patience for that. I don't. I like to take the little kernels that he gives me and go do something with it. It's like we're a combination of two people. He's got that kind of mind. But it just reminds me of how fast this is moving, but more importantly, where the information is. He's looking at the Reddit threads every day. These and every single software that we're talking about, and the ones that are going to come out tomorrow, will all have a Discord, they'll have a Twitter thread, they'll have a Reddit thread, and there's this flurry of dialogue. And so as a place to find out the latest stuff that you can teach your students, ironically, don't tell them where you're getting it. That's where there's this fantastic flow of information that I'm really indebted to my friend David for having the patience to read that stuff, filter through it, and said, guess what you can do now? It's just from him, I get this sense of how big the community is, how much information there is, where to go to get it. I don't look at that stuff, but boy, he sure does. And I really get an idea of the global online community where you can share and network, and it's real time, and it's a lot of information. It's moving fast. So I don't know, again, as an educator, I'm not one of you in that sense. So my 2 cents. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Nida, do you have any closing words?
Yeah, I guess my ask of everybody is not to just disengage, but actually to engage and talk about it. I find that there's some people who are afraid of it or excited about it or whatever, or they don't want to talk about it because of the intellectual property or the unions or anything like that. I feel like the only way that we're going to solve this problem, if we do what we're doing right here, is just talk as much as possible and try to like problem solve and reach out and, oh, that was a good idea. And so I just hope that you all as educators actually have open conversations and engage and work with this, because there's no way that we're all gonna, like, we can't stay quiet for this. It's just happening way too fast. So that would be my final thing. And appreciate the invite here. It's great to talk to so many talented people, especially educators.
Okay, Kevin, did you have anything to say before we finish up?
Yeah, Tom had said every war has its casualties, and that is true. And I think as kind of educators, we teach hope. I mean, that's our job. I mean, we are in many ways kind of like the first responders to students right now. I mean, there's crises going on. We have, studio cutbacks. We have, mental illness. We have this technological thing called AI that is giving, people anxiety. And I think what I got from this conversation, and certainly listening to everybody, and is that, our job it should change as AI is making these things change, and that we offer that hope with some realism. We encourage, communication. We rethink the kind of skills that we want them to come out with, that they will be successful mentally and hopefully successful financially. And so, as I put together whatever my next syllabus and so on, these are the things that I want to do. Don't be afraid. I mean, it's going to be there, so there's no point in poo-pooing. I mean, it is that our job is to offer students hope, because that's what we've always done. And maybe somehow we've lost track of that. And maybe this is a moment in which we get that back.
All right. Yeah, I agree with Nye. We just need to keep talking. And we will probably have another one of these sometime in November around CTN Expo. It might be in person. We haven't decided yet, but stay tuned and we'll let you know. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.